Before we start the episode, this is for the doctors listening. If you treat personal injury patients, you will be asked to defend your records. Depositions and subpoenas are not a possibility, they're inevitable. On February 13th and 14th from 9 to 11 a.m., we're hosting a virtual training seminar called You Are the Expert. We train physicians how to document, prepare, and testify with confidence before an attorney or insurance carrier ever questions your credibility. Register now at pisciences.com and click the banner at the top of the page and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Injuries at Evidence, the podcast where real-life injuries meet real-life science and solutions. I'm your host, Jason Wardell, and I have a really special guest with me today, Vanessa Ramirez. Vanessa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
I'm really excited. This has been a couple weeks in planning to get you on the podcast.
Yes.
A couple vacations have gone through and much needed.
Yes, definitely.
So tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what's brought to this moment.
Yeah, of course. So I started in personal injury 16 years ago. And literally from the bottom, kind of worked my way up doing paralegal work. We were back then did workers' comp and anything that, all personal injury law. Did a lot of litigation and then kind of branched off to a newer firm. And that's kind of where I started seeing that I knew more than I realized I knew. So being able to make changes in this new firm and implementing things that I had worked on for, it had been about 8 years now that I had been doing personal injury. So just growing that firm and doing business development, paralegal work, doing public relations, a little bit of everything, which was amazing. And then shortly after, I branched out and started my own company, which is now the Injury Law Consultants. And so, yes. And so since then, we've been able to help many, many law firms and attorneys, whether that is a seasoned, sometimes it's new attorneys that are just starting or attorneys that have been practicing for years, but maybe want to start doing PI or have done PI for 20, 30 years, but they haven't evolved with time, right? As time has. And things change and rules change and all of that. And so I do invest a lot in my educational training and like to stay up to date in what are other people doing and how are they getting the results that they're getting, and then be able to bring that back and implement that with my clients. So that's kind of how that works on the consulting, again, with just firms that need to get a little bit of, want to get a little bit better at what they do and help their clients and the community. And then overall, that's something that we do together against the insurance companies.
I love that.
Yeah.
So on your consulting, does that involve just technology or is it process improvement? Like what kind of aspects do you focus on? Because I know that there is a transition that law firms go through because the pricing going from paid up front to contingency, that's definitely a pivot that firms have to work with, even on the accounting and billing side.
Yeah.
So what aspects is it all of that, kind of everything encompassed with consulting?
So operations and workflows, right?
Okay.
So learning how to manage a case properly from the beginning, right? With medical treatment. But there's some firms too that it's they need systems in place. They need templates. Sometimes they don't have templates. So we go in and just kind of literally everything from A to Z. If it were someone that just got out of law school today and they're like,
oh, cool.
I don't know what to do. Let's guide you through how insurance works, how claims work, and then also the operations part of it as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So there's probably some business structuring that you support them with as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, outside of just you sign up, get your own business license on your firm, but this is actually how you structure your staff, how your staffing requirements. What do you need to actually manage a case, a case load, and effectively work those to max value?
What do we need?
Yeah,
there's a lot. There's a lot. And it goes from, I think, the initial training, right? Understanding how PI works, how insurance works.
Yeah.
I've had firms that they don't even know what PIP is. They don't even know what coverage they have on their insurance. They don't know what a deck page is. So it's kind of tailored to every law firm and making sure they understand literally from
fundamentals
zero
to advanced, very strategic, whether you're teeing up a case for litigation, but really it's from any case you can take the fundamentals and apply those strategies.
Yes, yeah. And I think every case, you mentioned something there, but I think every case should be, the moment you're taking it in from intake, the moment you're taking that call, your staff should already be thinking, if this case goes to litigation, how should we be preparing that case, right? I think every case should be treated that way. You should be looking at liability, are there other negligent parties that we can include in this? What are the injuries? How are we building that? Those kind of things. So, yeah.
That's, I think, one of the biggest topics we run into on the medical side when we're training physicians is think of the end in mind. Like you have to think of every case coming in, whether it's to a law firm or to a clinic for an exam. You got to think this case is going to litigation. And if your records, if your documentation is going to be thrown in front of a jury, is it going to make sense or is it going to make you look like a buffoon?
Yes.
And let just the defense have a day.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a strategy I think is really undervalued.
Absolutely.
And overlooked a lot of times on cases.
Yeah. And there's sometimes, even the medical records, they are doctors. We're sending them to physicians, right? But in PI, and we've discussed this, is like, what do the medical records say? And is that matching what the client is suffering and going through? Does that look the same as they're communicating verbally that it does on documentation? Because at the end of the day, the evidence is in the medical records, and that's what's going to be taken to court.
I love that. Yeah. I think that's definitely incredibly valuable and needed for paralegals.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you. Thanks for your work on that.
Yes, of course.
Definitely an uphill battle, but definitely worth the fight.
Yes.
So let's jump into a little bit of kind of some of the insights that you've gleaned from 16 years of experience in law and jumping between different firms and supporting firms now from a consulting and a legal aspect. What are some of the things that you can see from a strategy perspective that law firms can implement to drastically change outcomes of cases? Like some fundamentals that you consistently see with firm after firm, without giving away all the meat and potatoes, but what are some things that they can look at?
Yeah, I would say, so identifying injuries right away, right, from intake, understanding what those are. Each client is going to be very, very different. And so being able to understand what's going on with that client, how the accident happened, what does liability look like? Again, are there certain people you can, or other negligent parties that you can pull in? And then just building that with the evidence that you have. Are you collecting all of the evidence needed to properly build the case?
Okay, got it. So really looking, but how do you know that from day one? Like if you're aggregating those from the reason why I ask this from a medical standpoint, when we interview a client, they may reveal things that are different during that triage and evaluation to a medical provider than they do to a paralegal or a legal staff or an attorney. So how do you overcome that? Because that's a common thing we see, because they're like, my client had neck pain. And it's like, okay, there's a torn labrum in the shoulder, and we have a lower lumbar disc herniation.
Right.
And so how are we addressing those complaints as well? Because on intake, there's one aspect, and if that's all you're chasing, it's like we're missing a whole other facet of diagnosis as well as value on the case.
I think what I've seen too is a lot of firms forget about the human factor, right? And thinking of what, as you're speaking to, and it should be personal, as you're speaking to each client, like, so what did you go through? And sometimes they're describing, they might say, well, when we got rear-ended, my knee went through the seat in front of me. And at the hospital, they'll just start telling the story, and they're saying like, oh yeah, and my lip was bleeding. And it's like, okay, but you didn't mention headaches when we went over injuries or things like that. So then I think that's very important from the law firm side to be able to catch those things and listen. Like, you need to be paying attention. And if they're saying like, or in the medical report, right, in the ER visit, this is a true story, by the way, in the ER visit, we got the medical records, and that's where we were able to find out, like, wait a minute, why her lip was bleeding, all of this other stuff. She didn't really mention any of that. We didn't know. And so we were able to get photos, send it in for a scar revision. And that really gave the case more value too. We realized, well, maybe she has head trauma If she had her, her lip cut, then she probably hit her head and other things like that. So in the police report, I feel like you can find a lot of information when you're reading the DI-9.
Oh, okay.
And you see like their seat location, which you should be paying attention to that. So you're looking at seat location, where the impact happened. That will give you a lot of information as far as like maybe how severe or why that person is a lot more injured than maybe the driver or something,
Yeah.
right? And will allow you to have more questions, I guess, once you understand the police report, looking at medical records from the ER or the ambulance, body cam, from the police officers. If you watch that, you'd be surprised the data you can get in there. A lot of information.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So you can really glean information from a lot of different facets.
Absolutely.
I love that. We host this podcast for the love of personal injury. If you love PI and want to help our mission, share this podcast with a friend or on social media. Also, don't forget to check out www.pisciences.com for upcoming training and education for legal professionals and physicians who practice in personal injury. Now, back to the show.
Yeah.
That's actually, so the mechanism of injury, you touched on that. That's actually a very important point in terms of diagnosis. So that's one thing that we focus really heavily on, is making sure we have a proper past medical history. Because let's say it's pre-existing. Was it made worse? Was it dormant? Like, asymptomatic?
Yes.
And then from that, like, what was their body positioning? Because there's so much you can glean. Was their head turned? Was their body turned? Was it one arm on the steering wheel? Did they have their seatbelt on? Was it just over the lap? Like, there's so many different things. So it's like, oh, the seatbelt like tightened, and you have a bruise on your collarbone, like, that it pulled here, so your torso rotated just a bit.
Right.
All these things are mechanism of injury. So you have to evaluate the biomechanics of all those areas that were impacted.
And I think it's great. I mean, you mentioned a lot of great stuff there, because a lot of that should be asked in intake, right? When you're from the legal side.
From the medical side, it should be as well.
Yes. And so I feel like if you're doing that on the legal side, you're understanding that now we're not physicians, we're not biomechanical engineers, anything like that. But if we at least are able to collect that information, we can bring in the right people to support that or look through it and see what that would look like, right? And why, like you said, seated position. We had a client once she was sitting in the front seat and she was turned facing her husband, gets impacted, and and there was question about, well, why is the injury here? Or what about this? And then,
or why was this person injured more than this person? It's like, you have to look at body positioning.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of things biomechanically that can happen between two occupants of the same vehicle.
Right.
In the same accident.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you know this.
Well,
I love that.
It's funny. I got involved in PI, 7-8 years ago when I met Dr. Brandon Carter.
Okay.
In building PI sciences. And there was a lot of stuff that I didn't understand, but my background is genetics and biotechnology.
Okay.
And I took a lot of biophysics and physics courses. So for me, it was really fun. I loved calculus, and there was a lot of math that we've been able to apply in our software as we're just analyzing cases. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've ever applied my college physics program into a business. It's so cool for me.
Yeah, this is
and actually make a difference.
For that. Great industry for that.
It's like that example where it's like, oh, how many times you can use that algebra problem? Like, Tony goes to the store and buys 20 watermelons. It's like, I feel finally I'm able to apply that. Like, it applies to me.
And it's just so, it's amazing. It's intriguing. It's just incredible that we're able to hire people or work with people that are able to get this data for us. It's very important. Even when we have, accident reconstructionists, and they're doing the same thing, and they're calculating, to the second, like, well, if this car hit here and then it bounced this way, they know exact timing, they know speed, they know everything. Like, it's incredible.
There's a whole science behind the impact and accident reconstruction and forensics.
Yes.
It's a whole science there. That's outside of what we do, but it is so fascinating seeing how they analyze those accidents with the vectors of injury. Like the mechanical vectors and forces that are translated between vehicle number 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, however many are stacked up in the pile up.
Yes.
So it's amazing seeing that science that they put into it.
It really is. I'm thinking of, there was a case, you might be familiar with Mountain View Highway.
Yeah.
And they had just recently opened it, and I felt like there was something very, very wrong there, because at the beginning there were quite a few accidents in a certain area. And so we had a potential wrongful death case of some young adults. And before saying, we can't, it was a red light, it was their fault, looking into that. And so we did speak to an accident reconstructionist to see, and just hearing about the data that they were able to pull, because I'm thinking, well, maybe there's something wrong with that, because that span of space that they need to get through, and the lights, and when the lights change, and so many things. And so having him look into it was, we were very grateful that he was able to do that. But it's just, so much that goes into it, but it's truly fascinating. So that what you did. Yeah, I know. I'm like, I never thought it would intrigue me as it does these days when it has to do with these cases, and seeing how we can help people and what we can prove with the data that's there,
I also think it's really interesting if you look at property damage versus bodily injury.
Yes.
And there's a lot of research that supports low velocity impacts, and it's kinetic energy versus potential energy. So how much energy is transferred in those accidents?
Right. Now,
bumpers, there's a lot of safety features on vehicles, but there still is a transfer of energy.
Oh, absolutely.
Depending on how that occurs, those two, I know insurance tightly correlates, like, oh, there's $1,000 of property damage, but it's like, hold up, we have real injury that are acute traumatic injury diagnosis. Those are related to this low velocity impact. Those two shouldn't be correlated, and they are, but they shouldn't. And we see that consistently, that even if it's a low velocity impact, like less than 10 miles an hour, we still see trauma on any kind of ligament and joint, as well as concussion symptoms, like if you've had a prior concussion. So this is where past medical comes into play. Like a prior concussion, how does that lead into a secondary concussion with a low velocity impact? It's like, well, there's a lot of data showing that you can be injured just as bad with less velocity and force.
Right.
So you have to take that into account with any kind of accident. So anyways.
No, I love that. We've had, rear ends that they have the tow package on. Have you seen those things?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, the damage wasn't that bad to the bumper, because guess what took the impact?
Yeah.
The hitch. And have you seen how you put the hitch on?
Bolt straight to the frame, and it goes straight through the frame.
Yes. Yeah. So I get that.
There was no damage to their vehicle. It's like, well, it all went through the vehicle. Did you see the seats?
Yes.
Seat hinges are probably broke.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So one of the problems that we see consistently is coordination of medical treatment. So we can go through the process of identifying bodily injury and identifying injured states prior to signing a case or bringing them on. But once a firm has them signed, how do they navigate making sure they get through a medical treatment plan? Like how do you help firms understand kind of that relationship aspect with medical providers?
Yeah. I think, again, back to like the intake, right? Intake being really important, understanding what the client is telling you, how it happened, things that sometimes they don't realize, like, I guess what has happened. Or sometimes they're telling you, oh, the accident happened like this, and then they start being really emotional, and the trauma that you're hearing.
Yeah.
And so I think on the legal side, it's very important to be aware of what seems abnormal. And I think after doing it for so long, you're able to see that in the different clients as you do intakes. But then having the right medical professionals to be able to treat them, and them being the dictating physicians to say, hey, we're sending it in like, hey, here's a referral. This is what they've told us. Here's the injuries and or symptoms. Also, this is how it happened. They might, be able to think of some things as well. And so once they get the patient in, we like them to be the dictating physicians and say, maybe they might need PT, they might need chiro, they might need an MRI right away because of they're complaining of radiculopathy symptoms or things like that, right? So I think it's important to have a whether that's an MD or a PA, but somebody on it that can then refer and understands also PI, and not just the physical, but mental as well, right? We talked about like having, I think too, sometimes because as the treatment goes on, or sometimes if they've waited a little bit, the patient or client sometimes becomes accustomed to the injury. And so now they are doing their life around their injury. And so they're like, well, I know I can't do that, so I'll stop doing that now and I'll start doing it a different way. So they forget about the real injury, right? So I think it's really important to make sure that on the legal side, you understand and you're having that communication with the client, but then also making sure that the provider is on the same page and understands that information is being given, so that the provider can kind of move the patient along in different areas. They might need a shoulder ortho while they're doing lumbar injections or something, so making sure that the physician knows how to refer out, and that you have the right physicians that you can utilize for your patients and their recovery, or your clients and their recovery.
Quick note, we don't make $1 from this podcast. No sponsors, no ads, just real conversations about personal injury. The only way it grows is when listeners like you share it. If this episode helped you, send it to someone else that would learn from it. Now, back to the show. That is really valuable, making sure that you have the right physicians who understand PI.
Yes.
There's a lot of physicians, incredible physicians, and I've spoken with a lot of doctors where they say, I know more and more about less and less, where they become hyper-focused in their niche. And that's what you want. You want hyper-specialized treatment to where they understand the biomechanics of the spine or the shoulder or the labrum or whatever it is. They can become hyper-specialized there. But it becomes a challenge when they start trying to treat outside of their scope.
Yes.
And that's a little bit on the medical coordination side that I feel paralegals across the industry, everyone kind of struggles with. How do I move them through this treatment plan?
Right.
Like if they're treating and it's a labrum tear, it's like, how do I move them to that next step?
Yeah.
Like what indicators would you suggest for like paralegals and case managers to look for on their cases to help move them through that process so they don't get stagnant?
Yeah. I think it's important, again, right? Like the physician, and very important that once they see the physician and getting the report back and reviewing that report immediately to make sure that it is documented, right? So again, when I'm talking about two different body parts and they're saying, well, the shoulder's really, really bad, and it's taking over, my body, and I can't work and I can't do these things and lots of limitations, but their back is also injured, but this is taking like the primary, it's on their mind because it's limiting them, right? So I feel like if you're reading the reports and you're making sure that it matches what the client's telling you, you can make sure that the physician knows how to treat that. And if they don't, okay, then we need to address somewhere else. And which is where kind of like the funding company comes in place. And when we're hearing that, we're saying, okay, well, we have a physician that can treat this, and that is very separate than a physician that treats this body part, right? So having the right network is very helpful, but knowing how to identify and making sure as on the legal side that you are reading the reports and that all of the injuries are being addressed, because the same physician may not be an expert in that certain injury that another physician might be in. Yeah. So
scar revision's a really good example of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to get the right physician to sign off on like a scar revision.
Exactly.
And they're not an ortho, but they have to have the right credentialing for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned something, a couple of thoughts that while you were explaining that, a couple of thoughts. The first is understanding how powerful the right medical network is. Right. So whether a firm uses a lien funding company or establishes an independent medical group, making sure that they understand and manage the quality of the reports and the quality of the treatment they're getting from their medical providers. I think that's really important for attorneys to take a very proactive approach in managing those relationships.
Absolutely.
Because we see whether it's poor documentation or just issues on the business side that undermines, and the ultimate person who suffers from a business issue between an attorney and a provider is the client, is the patient. Right. They're the ultimate, they're the ones who are affected by that.
It's true.
So making sure that you have the right providers to help coordinate and manage your care is incredibly valuable. It's worth its weight in millions,
it's everything.
Really. Yeah.
It's everything. Like I tell on the legal side, telling the clients, like, listen, and this is from intake, saying, the number one goal is your recovery. You
Yeah.
have one body and you have one case, and the goal is to get you better, but also be able to build a good case, right? And as you're going to this treatment, we want to make sure that you're improving and not worsening. And we want to make sure if it's not working, the physician and we need to know so that we can address that and either tweak some treatment and or if it's really not working, maybe get you somewhere else. Because at the end of the day, it's your case, and sure, you're not paying out of your pocket right now. However, it is coming out of your settlement. So we want to make sure that your money is being put to good use so that you are getting better.
Yeah. I think that's incredibly important. Just
It
helping
is,
them.
yeah.
And that's setting the expectation from day one.
Absolutely.
Anyone who's in PI knows that you don't hit a home run every single case.
Yes.
But setting up the expectation and the understanding that the purpose of what they're doing post-accident, it's to get better. It's to
Right.
get healed. Like
Yes.
you have to get treatment.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a cultural thing here in Utah where people feel bad about, one, finding an attorney to file a claim, or two, getting treatment for the injury as a result of the accident because they feel bad that their insurance premiums are going to raise. It's like, because you got in the accident,
Yes.
their insurance premiums are already screwed. Like
Yeah.
they're going to raise no
Yeah.
matter what. So get treatment. You have a minimum of $3,000.
Right.
Get imaging, get treatment. Like don't suffer, because once your case closes,
Yeah.
there's nothing you're going to get.
Oh,
So
yeah.
get some help right now.
Right.
And we find so many clients are like, well, I'm not going to get an attorney. It's like, do you realize you have like an L2 disc herniation?
Yes.
Like you need some help.
I've had even a situation where, it was really bad. They went to ER and everything. And then they said, well, but it was this little old sweet lady. And, I don't want to do this to her. I said,
She's
"You're
at my
not-"
local church.
Yeah,
It's like-
yeah, yes. I'm like, it's not against her. It's nothing personal. We all carry, car insurance for this exact
Yeah.
situation. You never know when you will need it. It's not anything personal. She has car insurance. You're able to use that, and that's what it's there for.
Just think how much you've paid over the past 10 years with your car insurance.
Right. Yeah.
That'll make you go, okay, I'm going to
Yes.
use some.
Yeah.
You have a very broad view from both the legal industry as well as the medical industry with working with a medical funding group. How do you see, if you had a magic wand, you could say, fix this
Oh my gosh.
in
Yeah.
the
this is a good
PI
one.
field, where would you start? I've got my laundry list.
Yeah.
I'm doing like
Yeah.
Donald Trump hands, sorry. But where would you start? Like, what would be the first things that you would jump into?
Yeah. So I would say, and this might sound very cliche, but to always put the client first, because I feel like a lot of times people get in the industry sometimes for the wrong reasons into personal injury, and or they begin doing personal injury and then something else gets in the way of the client, perhaps ego, perhaps monetary gain, things like that. And so if I had a magic wand, I would say, make sure everybody remembers, like, it's the client who suffers. It's the client who goes through this. You have many other cases and opportunities to do more, but let's do it right by the client. And also the community, right? So, don't be lazy, don't be, I hate to say it like that, but it's like,
Spit
make
fire.
sure make sure that you are investing in your education and keeping up to date with new things that are coming out, new ways, new techniques, collaboration, right? There's so many of us law firms. Yesterday we were at this event, an anniversary at a law firm, and it was just really cool to see everyone coming together, having a good time. And I think if we can do that and come together as a community on the legal side and protect our clients and community together against the insurance company, it should never be against like, oh, what's so-and-so doing there? However, what can we do together to help the clients and community? So it's us against the insurance, right? And just being able to, again, that comes like from educating ourselves and being able to share that with our colleagues in helping the community, helping the clients maximize their case value. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel focusing on the clients and their outcome, like supporting the clients, because having worked with 1,000 patients who've come through PI Sciences, not one of them is like, man, I'm so glad I got rear-ended the other day. Yeah. Like that sounds, sorry, let me restate that. I got in an accident the other day, and no one is ever feeling like, man, I get to go to treatment for the next 7 months, and I get pain management injections. Like no one's looking forward to it. Like, and it's a very confusing time, because not only is they're probably out of a vehicle. So now they're stressed on transportation. They're probably having issues with their employment. If they have concussions, it is very, very, very challenging for them to do any work, especially with blue lights on a computer screen. Yeah. So you think of the lifestyle impact for clients and patients after an accident. It's not like, hey, I'm going to get treated, I'm good in a couple months. A lot of times it's not. Yeah. There is a life, there's an entire rating system. It's called a permanent impairment rating, where it shows how much of their life, their whole body is impacted for the rest of their life. Yes. And just how important that is for not only providers, but attorneys, if they're sending in a demand, if they're working with an adjuster, understanding how important that value is with subsequent lifestyle changes data. So if it's called the duties under duress, loss of enjoyment, making sure you have that documented and get that to the adjuster. So it's not like, hey, my client, they have neck pain. It's like that neck pain has really screwed them over. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so much bigger than just one injury. It's like it affects their whole life. And it's not just me. So if I were to get injured, who would be impacted by my injury? Right. My employees at PI Sciences, my family, my wife and kids, like they all rely on me. So if something happens here, like you said, there's a community that needs to be supported. Right. More than just the legal staff in the community, but the community around that patient. Yeah. Everyone who relies on them. Like there's so much there. I feel very passionate about that. I don't know if you can tell.
No, I love that. And you said something really important that I feel like a lot of firms forget about, the human factor, right? And who else is this affecting? So a lot of the times, and I've heard this from firms, I've heard this from providers, and they think it's all based on what's the injury and how much are the meds. And I'm like, why are you, that's like, sure, that's good. However, what really matters is, did you know how this affected their life? Did you know that this person had to switch locations of their employment because they could no longer drive on that road? So it affected them traumatically. Did you know that, a certain person had to change their position at their employment because they had to move around, coordinating, taking the children somewhere? There's so many things that go into it. And so if you're not listening to your clients, you're missing all of that. I think it's very important to be patient. You have to have a lot of patience in the industry because it is hard. They're calling you at one of the worst times of their lives. They're frustrated. Sometimes they're losing their social life because they can't be around the light, the sensitivity to light, to noise, to things, their headaches, So it's really sad. It's really sad, but I think it's important to stay compassionate, be empathetic with your clients, and know that they only have one case, one opportunity, and
they have one life.
Yeah, and it's your duty, if they're hiring you, to be there for them and really, really advocate for them.
And that I couldn't have said it better myself. Like that is perfect. The other thing is the medical providers. Like your documentation will directly affect the outcome of that case.
Absolutely.
So the better the documentation is from the medical providers, the better chance they have of covering future medical needs, because it's never over with long-term diagnoses.
It's true.
And long-term injury. It becomes chronic.
Right.
But like you said, like you kind of adjust your lifestyle to it, but you still have that lack of ability to do something.
Absolutely.
And there's a long-term financial factor that comes into play there that physicians often overlook not documenting that correctly.
Yes. And they hear it. Sometimes they hear it because I tell the client, thank you for letting us know. Did you let the physician know? Make sure that you're telling your provider, oh, yeah, we'll tell them. And then it doesn't come out in the medical record. I'm like, oh, something got missing. Oh, they did tell us. I said, oh, well, it's not documented. Like, please make sure you're getting that in there. It's very important because if this goes to trial and the evidence that we have is your medical records, it needs to be in there. It's very helpful to the patient and sometimes overlooked.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely have loved today's conversation. Thank you for jumping on the podcast with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
For our audience, how can they get in touch with you, and where are you currently servicing with both legal consulting as well as lien funding?
Yeah, right now we're sticking to just Utah.
Okay.
So Utah on the medical side, we are from Utah, mostly Utah County, all the way to Weber County, and then out to Tooele and Summit County as well, Park City. We have some providers out that way. And then for the consulting, I know Utah law, that's what we do. That's kind of what we stick to. We don't want anyone getting any malpractices in any other states as of now. I am working on some things to be able to collaborate with other companies that will be able to target other states as well, that will be very well educated in the laws in those states. So best place to find us, we do have websites and or social media, Google as well. So the Injury Law Consultants and Lean Care Providers.
Perfect. Well, for the audience that's listening, follow her on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, connect with her there. And like today's discussion, I am so looking forward to where you're going to be in the next couple of years. And just seeing your growth as you help law firms, help paralegals, help legal staff, as well as helping medical providers. And ultimately how many lives are going to be changed by what you're doing. So I'm really excited to see your growth in the next several years.
Thank you. So am I. I can't wait to see that, like the ripple effect in the community again. So really excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Injuries and Evidence. If this episode added value, subscribe to PI Sciences and grab our free gift, a 60-minute training called A to Z in Personal Injury. It includes all the tools we use every day to strengthen documentation and improve case outcomes. The link is in the show notes. Use it. Don't leave value on the table. We'll see you on the next one.